And here we are, once again, on our beautiful, as always, good morning walk. So, as always, give time people to come in and settle in. Oops-a-daisy. There we go. So, as always, good morning, good morning, good morning. Oops-a-daisy. This is going to be a bit difficult. Squeeze through here. Oh, good morning, good morning, good morning. Well, like I say, we are once again out and about here. Good morning, Cathal OG. Carpy, good morning to you as well. Oh, train's just going past. Ben, good morning to you. 27 Bike Brothers, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning, one and all. Oh. So, like I say, I hope you've all been having a very good week this week. Oh, hang on. Oh dear. That's just sheer mud pile that way. Let's see if we can't go a different way around. Shall we just risk it? Oh, I've got my wellies on, I'll risk it. So the news, right? Yeah. Yeah, well, to be honest, it's one of those things of, and I understand a lot of people, you know, there is, don't get me wrong, there is other stuff going on, but, you know, the main thing that's going to dominate the news probably for the next, probably until it at least has some sort of conclusion, is going to be the situation in Ukraine. Good morning, Paz News. Good morning to you. So yeah, as I've said before, buckle in on this. Ball hat man sinks into the mud and has to be rescued by a helicopter. Probably true. Demeter, good morning to you. And like I say, good morning to everyone else joining us today on the Good Morning Walk. So, it looks like, potentially, this war in Ukraine is going to be entering a potentially deadly new phase. Because when you listen to a lot of the analysts, oh, good morning, pretty bird. When you listen to a lot of the analysts that have been looking at, like, just what's going on with this. Haggard, good morning to you. Good morning. When you look at, like, what a lot of the analysts have been saying about this, and been going, well, you look at Putin's past wars in Georgia, how he took Crimea, you know, how he finished off the Chechen war in Chechnya. What Putin tended to do was to try. Oh, good morning from Luxembourg. Good morning to you. Good morning to you, Tom. Yeah, Aleppo. We'll get to talking about Aleppo in a moment. Don't worry about that. Of course, what happened was that these wars, bar the Chechen war, because Putin wasn't there to begin with, but when sort of they came in, Putin tended to try and finish these wars as quickly as possible, just through sheer force of numbers, and then bring his opponent to the negotiating table to try and negotiate something. Oh, Josh Crelton, good morning to you. Thank you very much for your support there, Josh. Thank you very much. You know, it was an attempt to try and bring them to the negotiating table as quickly as possible. And I think that is what we have seen attempted but failed. We've seen Putin make essentially a mad dash for Kiev. But it's Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, again, meant to fall in like the first or second day, is still heavily resisting. And if you've been watching any news reports about Kharkiv, you know, or any of the people that are talking from Kharkiv, they will tell you that even though they're just literally a couple of miles from the border, they know the difference that living there has a higher standard of living than they do on the other side of the border. And remember, this is meant to be a place where originally back in 2014, just as we saw in Donbass and Luhansk, this was another place where Putin targeted for a potential separatist uprising, but the people pushed them out. They managed to push them out of the city and said, no, we're not having this. So to a lot of people who have said before that, you know, if Putin gets these, he's obviously going to continue with that trend of pushing for more and more, you know, separatist movements in Ukraine as much as he can. And even then, when you look at, the Donbass region, not Donetsk, the Donbass region, it was actually really, really small in terms of what they were able to achieve and how much territory they've been able to hold over that time period. So, and even then we've seen a complete lack. There has been movement along that border during the war. There have been an attempted few breakout attempts, but more or less that border has been kept intact. The area where we have, I keep on saying this, the area where we have seen the biggest parts of the movement have been down south. You know, the troops coming up from Crimea up towards Mariupol. And I will maintain that that is what Putin's true objective is. He wants to take the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, and he also wants to secure that land route to Crimea. Because I will always say this, that is what this war is about. It is about Putin's ability to be able to hold and supply Crimea, because you can supply Crimea far, far easily from the Ukrainian side than you can currently where it is from the Russian side, and especially with fresh water. So that is what I will maintain, that this is what this war was really all about. Because in 2014, after essentially Putin annexed Crimea, he got a lot of his oligarchs to put a lot of their money into rebuilding Crimea, and for it to become like the new place for the Russian elite to go and hang out, which it was ironically during the Soviet Union. Yeah, yeah, that's actually quite one of the funny things that we've been seeing as well. The communications failures. In fact, that's why a lot of people are speculating, because I haven't seen it confirmed, of course, that we've seen two or three generals that have died in like in like the past couple of weeks. So these generals, because their communication equipment is absolutely failing. They already have a new place. It's called Suchi. Yeah, two. Like I say, I'm pretty sure it was like two or three like top generals that have been taken out. The reason why they've been taken out so badly is because their communications are so bad that they are having to do this like World War I style. Like the general writes out his orders, gives it to a dispatch team. You know, they jump on their bike, or they're basically a runner, and they literally run to where the troops are to get their orders out, because their communications are failing, because it seems that Ukrainian hackers are hacking their communication equipment, and they're broadcasting on the Russian communication equipment. You know, the whole frog meme, you know, which, to be honest, I find quite funny. But also, that's been confirmed by they intercepted a Russian communication, and they recorded it, and they released it when after. And it's literally a communication of this guy complaining about the fact that this Russian general had died, and it took 4 days for anyone to realise that this guy had died. They were like trying to send out orders, or trying to get, you know, new orders about what to do next, and no one knew what to do because the communications were that slow. So I think this is why you're seeing such a slow advance versus in the south, where those war plans were probably already existed for quite a while. And of course, now we've got those southern troops again, by the looks of it, heading towards Odessa. They've lost, I think, 2 ships, although it hasn't been confirmed. Taken out by like from shore rocket batteries. So that in itself, and it just goes to show you the absolute will to fight. You know, that is being put forward by the Ukrainians. And it's absolutely unbelievable that they have, again, all the Western analysis had said Putin's going to come full bore, you know, and bear down in Ukraine, and this could be over within a week. And yet here we are, what is it? Day 17, 18 of this war so far. And yet they weren't meant to last 3 days. I'd say that's pretty good innings, to be honest. But of course, as I've said before, the worrying thing is, I think we're entering a new phase of this. It's very likely the thing that we've been worried about really since the war began, of the essential surrounding of Kiev. or Kyiv, depending on, of course, what you want to go with. So that very much looks like that could happen this week. Those forces are that long, shall we say, traffic jam has finally wound its way, and they have started now essentially assuming battle positions on this. So this is where this could get really bad, because if you look up anything about the Russian army, look up any experts to say how the Russian army fights. And again, this is what's been baffling a lot of people. They haven't used sort of their normal battle tactics yet. So far, it has just been a let's dash for the main points and it should all be over. But again, that hasn't happened. So Russia really is an artillery army with tanks. Their normal battle doctrine is to just fire as much as possible and then the tanks and the troops roll in behind that fire. That is what is essentially standard Russian military doctrine. Now, that hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen this mass artillery support, and this is what lends credence to the fact that I said at the beginning that I don't think Putin has really taken this seriously or thought that this would be a lot easier than he initially planned. And you are right, we'll get to talking about the logistics in a bit. But this is where it becomes sort of very, very worrying for this. So we've now got to look at why hasn't Putin deployed like his crack military units. Everything that has been sent so far has all been very much conscripts. None of the army so far has been the traditional Russian army. You've got like a crack artillery unit that isn't being sent to Ukraine. It's still sitting across from the border of Estonia. Why haven't they been sent in? Russia's got a new battle tank. What is it? The A-10 Armata or something like that, I think that its name is. Every tank we've been seeing so far aren't, Armatas. The T-97s. It's all old equipment. It's all the old tanks that they're sending in. Where are these new, fleet of battle tanks that we know Putin's built? So this is where it becomes deadly, because I think Putin underestimated what was going to happen. I think he thought he'd go in with a show of strength and Ukraine would just give in. That hasn't happened. And we are hearing reports from not only just the Ukrainians, third parties, but some of the stuff revealed by accident by one of the Russian Duma members recently. They think that Russia could have lost from death, injury, or captured something in the region of around 13,000 troops. That's an insane loss rate. That's insane. And I mentioned obviously the Russian Duma that got revealed by accident. the mayor of a town reported, of course, that they all got conscripted for like the unit in their town. They all got, sent away for this training exercise, and only 4 have come back out of 600. I just want to, make you realize that fact, that this was said openly in the Russian Duma, of out of 600 conscripts, only 4 returned. Now, is that true? Again, we don't know, but again, that came from the Russian Duma. So, and we know that Putin is desperately trying to keep a lid on all these losses and all this stuff. So, it's insane to think what this loss rate is, and the fact that it seems that, as I've said before, this gives credence to the fact that Putin did not take this war seriously. And this is where we've got to look at Aleppo. Because Aleppo in Syria, I think it's one of like the biggest cities out in Syria. Like it's probably like Kharkiv, I think. Like its 2nd or 3rd biggest city. And using conventional warfare, using the conventional warfare that Assad had, that lasted about 4 years. That entire siege of Aleppo lasted 4 years. Now, this is where the worrying thing comes in. Because if you're Putin, and you've seen that siege churn on for 4 years, but how did that siege end? How did Assad finally take that city? Well, it's where Assad started using his chemical weapons, the barrel bombs. 14 days after Assad had started using those barrel bombs, the siege ended. Assad finally took the city. And remember, Assad's excuse here for using those barrel bombs was that essentially the rebels had stolen his chemical weapons, and then they'd used them on themselves. That's what he was saying. But again, it was his chemical weapons. We have a whole series of reports, of eyewitness accounts of it was Syrian army helicopters that dropped these barrel bombs. And then, you have essentially the whole brutality of the chemical warfare that happened there and what happened after that. So if you're Putin and you know that the Ukrainians are going to essentially make you fight tooth and nail in every street, in every alleyway, from apartment to apartment, house to house, for every inch, it's going to turn it into an absolute bloodbath, that you are not going to be able to essentially keep those numbers hidden. And we already know the anti-war protests in Russia are gathering steam heavily every day, more and more. We've also seen a strike by factory workers very recently protesting against the war. So it really is a question of time. And the longer I've said, the Ukrainians hold every minute, every hour, every day they buy allows them more time, not only for more material and, you know, the international brigades to turn up in Ukraine to help them, and weapons, and obviously more Javelin missiles to help them, as well as Stinger systems. And also, it allows more time for the Russian people to turn against Putin even more. So time is not on Putin's side. And this is why we have seen, very worryingly this week, there we go. Nearly slid down there very gracefully. This is why this week we have seen coming out from, you know, the Russian obviously state press, and even in the UN, you know, Russia called a special session of the Security Council to basically say, oh look, we found American and Ukrainian biological weapons, and oh how dangerous these are. But yet there was no proof, just them saying that. This is classic Russian propaganda. You know, look at all these, you know, chemical weapons we've found. Sad if one just, you know, happens to go off. So that's what we've really got to worry about. That if Putin goes, I'm not going to fight. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But this is what we've really got to worry about, because is Putin going to go that far and use chemical weapons? Oh no, that's the... Oh yeah, I've forgotten there's a new... I was hoping they'd be on this side today because there is a new pony. I don't know if you can see him over yonder. New little baby pony birthed a couple of days ago, just over there, but they're all over there, that side. So that's the big problem. That if you're Putin, you've seen the Battle of Aleppo turn into a complete meat grinder for 4 years. And Assad made almost no progress during that time. And then he used the barrel bombs, which again, after those barrel bombs were dropped, the siege was over 14 days later. If you're Putin and you're looking at this thinking, I want to end this war as quickly as possible, then he may be looking at chemical weapons being the only way that he can end these sieges as quickly as possible. Because he does not want to be in an Aleppo situation where it's 4 years and he's got hundreds of thousands of casualties when they've already lost so much already over this. Yeah, that's the problem, Catholic. That's what we've got to look at now. Is Putin going to be so desperate that he reaches for those chemical weapons? And also the huge civilian casualties that those, you know, those weapons are going to cause. Because if you're looking at using something like chlorine gas, you know, chlorine gas is heavy, so it sinks. And you've probably seen on the news a lot recently about, especially the people in Kiev, using the underground as safety. The problem is, those undergrounds, while they may be built to help protect against nuclear war, they weren't built to help against chemical weapons attack. So the second you use a chemical weapon, and remember, most of Ukraine's civilian population are sheltering in those undergrounds, all those chemical weapons, and especially that chlorine gas, is just going to sink directly into the underground and cause awful, horrific civilian casualties on a scale and number we haven't seen probably since the Second World War. And that is what we have to worry about this week. We have to absolutely worry about that. But then again, equally, and what I've really been happy to see, is that in a lot of the places that have been occupied by the Russians so far, you are seeing Ukrainians gather in like mass marches to block roads and protest against those Russian troops being there, which is fantastic, because it just goes to show you Putin could very well win the battle for Ukraine, but he will never win the war for Ukraine. The idea that these people are going to be, sit back and just be, quietly annexed, not so. Like, not so at all. So that is again something that we might have to worry about this week, that we see chemical weapons used, on a massive scale. And of course, that is again the worry. By the way, sorry if I'm not reading any chat, so I miss anything like that on the screen. Like I say, I have to, I think at this point, concentrate on the path because it's very, very muddy. So we could very, very well see, I think, unfortunately, see this war escalate into, I think, another level of brutality here. And that's the danger. That really is the danger that we see from this potentially happening. Because as I said, if you're Putin, you want this war to be over as quickly as possible, and of course you want you want to come out with a victory. Then chemical weapons may very well be his only way to win this as quickly as possible. And that's the danger. Chemical weapons used for the first time on a mass, well, not the first time, because obviously it happened in Aleppo, but chemical weapons used in Europe for the first time since, well, the First World War. And that is what we have to worry about this week. But of course, the other thing we need to talk about are, of course, Putin's insane demands, which, of course, Zelensky is never, ever going to do. Again, this war is about, as Putin says, about denazification, but there's not a lot about this denazification being talked about so far in these peace protests. And as we said before, Ukraine is not going to join NATO. It can't. It literally can't, because of the issues in the Transnistria, between them and Moldova. So they can't join NATO already. So this idea that they were just going to join NATO, again, completely false, because they can't, because NATO won't let any country that has a territorial dispute, be a member. Not only that, France and Germany years ago had already said, not at this moment, thank you. So this really is indeed it was like a non-starter. So of course, Russia isn't going to be, but then again, they also can't and shouldn't be allowed to dictate what Ukraine as a country is and isn't allowed to do. Probably, yes, one day, Ukraine will join NATO eventually, as we have probably seen from this type of thing. It is pretty much cemented in their minds that this is why they want to join NATO. So the other interesting thing, of course, is that Putin doesn't want Ukraine to join the EU either. That is, again, in his demand. Now, why doesn't he want to do that? Because he wants to form his own economic union. So essentially, Ukraine becomes dependent on Russia for any of its economic needs, like it has with Belarus. Also, you've got the fact that there's all the laws, the regulations. Putin doesn't like that at all. He doesn't like the fact that Europe has essentially come together to, well, do that. And we've talked, probably the next couple of days, certainly, on my channel, we'll be talking, we've got a couple of videos about that. The fact that the whole idea of this Brexit mindset that, Britain can do it alone has now been completely well and truly invalidated. And I think you're going to get a lot of Tories openly thinking about, as we've said before, potential civil war. So those are the two big non-starters. And of course, obviously there's making those two regions, again, independent republics, but the likelihood that they, shall we say, stay independent republics is is laughable. They're very, very obviously going to be quickly annexed into Russia. The other obviously non-starter is that Ukraine disarms. It gets rid of its military, so that essentially, if Russia wants to do anything like this again to Ukraine in the future, well, you can't really do that much, especially if the country's only got about, say, about 10,000 soldiers, which is what apparently Russia wants to do, and no military vehicles or anything like that, no planes, no drones. That is what we have seen Putin make demands for. That, again, is I don't know if you can see how muddy that path is. Just literally had to wade through this path. I think we're going to have to stop coming this way next time, because it's just so muddy, this path. But yeah, the idea of any of these demands being accepted by Zelensky is pure nonsense. And one of the actual bizarre things I think you'll see, which will actually probably be quite good in the long run, is after this conflict, I think you're going to see Zelensky, the president of Moldova, get together and go, okay, we have to solve this Transnistria crisis now because we both need to be in NATO. Because Moldova has been worrying for the past couple of weeks, ever since Lushenko showed that map of the the possible, well, not possible, but the invasion plan on TV. Does show them again entering the Transnistria and even potentially not stopping at Ukraine and even going into Moldova, because remember, Moldova can't join NATO either because of the problem in Transnistria. So I fully expect this situation and that situation after this is over to get resolved very, very quickly. And remember, the Transnistria is for those of you who don't know, it's basically a very small strip of land between Ukraine and Moldova that's basically been again fighting for its own independence again since the fall of the Soviet Union. And of course, both Moldova and Ukraine have claimed ownership over the Transnistria, which again has led to this conflict. So I fully expect to see that conflict after this is over come to a very swift conclusion, because at the moment that is what is stopping Ukraine from joining NATO and Moldova, and they both want in. They both want in the club. They both want in the NATO club because they're terrified of future Russian aggression after that. So if anything, that is probably going to be a bizarre upside, of course, to all this. So that's unfortunately what we've got to worry about this week. Essentially, that chemical weapons may even get used. Of course, Putin, I think, is going to surround the city first, and I think we'll have to wait and see to see what happens when he's finally, shall we say, made that full surround, and how he intends, obviously, to go in and fight that, essentially fight and take that city. But that is what we are looking at now, potentially. So that's where we are, unfortunately, in this situation. But as I always say, every time we talk about Ukraine, the fighters over there and the army have done an absolutely fantastic job in being able to hold off this invasion. it really, really is going to be an interesting sight to behold, I think. But I think his more main intention, I think, as long as Kharkiv stands, I think Ukraine is going to be safe. But as I've always said, you've got to watch what's going on in East Ukraine at the moment, probably more than what's going on in the West and around Kiev. Don't get me wrong, that's important to watch as well. But if the East falls, and as we've said before, that surround happens, there's one city where the fallback line is going to be, and we've seen some aerial attacks happen there. I think it's a city literally on the big river that runs through Ukraine. What's it called? Donst? Something like that. And again, the mayor has vowed to turn that into a new Stalingrad, and indeed, he's been preparing. If you've seen any videos from that city, they've been digging trenches, tunnels, preparing, all kinds of stuff for the city to become a war zone. They are ready. They're digging in. But so long as the south and the east, the north and the south of eastern Ukraine, and the Ukrainian military holds, that surround isn't going to happen. But of course, should there be, as we've said before, a breakthrough in the east or the south, then all the Ukrainian military in the east is going to have to pull back. He's going to have no choice but to. And those lines that they've been holding, again, around Donetsk and Luhansk are going to fall. And I think once Putin has fully taken those areas, I basically think he's going to personally, end the war. And basically say, this area is mine now. These are two republics. They've got Russia's backing. Stop, or else, end this war and recognize their independence, or else we'll, again, just start bombarding. But I also think he's also going to ask, again, for that southern area of Ukraine from, I think, the tip of Crimea up to Mariupol to connect with the Donetsk region. I think that's, in my mind, probably the most likely scenario of what's going to happen, because I do not think Putin seriously has unless he starts to take this seriously, he's going to really, really struggle with the rest of it. And yeah, you're right, he probably won't settle for less than Donetsk and Luhansk. That's what this war was all about, and that's what he can really justify. But I think he's going to be greedy, and I think he's definitely going to ask for that southern area of region as well, from, again, Crimea right up to Mariupol, to create a corridor, again, so we can supply Crimea a lot easier. That's been the whole reason for this war to begin with, because Putin couldn't supply Crimea. He built a bridge, a massive bridge across the Sea of Azov that hasn't worked with supply. He has to take the mainland from Crimea, and yeah, you are right, he needs water. And if I was Zelensky, remember when this war started and they annexed Crimea, Zelensky and well, no, it wasn't Zelensky, it was the former one, basically filled in the the river that supplies Crimea with its fresh water with concrete, basically saying you can't have that. So one of the things, again, I think to stop taking that area would be to say, okay, we'll reopen the supply of fresh water. That's definitely something I think Zelensky can certainly live with. The former one is Poroshenko, that's it. Poroshenko did that. So I very much think that he could say, okay, we'll do that, and it will get certainly save Putin. And I think Putin will more likely agree with that, otherwise he's got to occupy that area. And it's very likely, as we've seen, the Ukrainians aren't going to be very happy with that occupation. But of course, I think the will to fight among the Ukrainians at the moment is so strong, and the current demands by Putin are so outlandishly outrageous, basically made for him to say no. Oh, bypass news. I just realised. Have a good weekend. You know, I think the plans that the peace talk settlements he's put forward are quite frankly so outrageous that Zelensky's obviously going to say no again about it. And then of course, what happens to Putin? Well, there's either two ways this ends. Either A, Putin just says, forget it, this war's been a failure, and pulls out, and then sells it as some sort of victory. Or he manages to take and get the Donetsk and Luhansk regions into those independent republics, but again, they'll be pretty much be handed over to Russian-backed separatist militias, so those republics aren't going to last long. They're going to be very, very quickly annexed. But again, as we've said before, those areas in themselves aren't all pro-Russian. It's only a very, very small minority that were very, very pro-Russian. If I was Zelensky, I'd go, okay, you can have maybe the current area of demarcation, let the rest of those areas go, but you only have that area, which is the pro-Russian part of this war. Now, of course, that's a lot less territory than Putin wanted, but it could be used as, again, giving something for Putin to save face about, which could, again, give him an out. Now, of course, we've got to be careful, of course, about framing this as, surrendering or appeasement, because it's not going to be that. But, ta-da! I know why all you come here for this stream. I know why. So, don't get me wrong. I think that would be if Ukraine can hold. Because remember, Ukraine really cannot hold forever. The sheer just weight of numbers of the Russian military forces is absolutely built against them. And yes, they've done a fantastic job so far, but how long can they hold off against that sheer weight of numbers? And as we've said before, Putin so far has only really committed the conscript forces to try and hopefully make this a very quick war. If he starts to commit the regular military Russian forces, that is again where we will start to see this, the doctrine essentially of, to quote one Russian commander, it's easier to take a car park than it is a city. And that tells you everything you need to know, unfortunately, about what would happen if the proper Russian military decides to get involved, not just the conscript forces that are basically just go that way and shoot anything that moves, essentially. That is the situation that Putin finds himself in. I think we'll probably start to see, I'd suspect, probably some major military movements along that front. Maybe if he does want to commit those Russian forces. But the reason why he may not want to commit those forces is that most of those forces are actually, again, along the NATO border. Like I say, one of his crack artillery units is currently across the border from Estonia. That's where they're sitting. So if they move towards Ukraine, that's when I think we're going to see that that military doctrine take place. So keep an eye on things like that moving around. Right, let's see if we can get out of here. Let's try and go around. So I think the surrounding of Ukraine, Kiev, this week is finally going to happen. I think it's very much inevitable. I think the Ukrainians are going to do everything they can, obviously, to stop it, which again I think will lead to obviously more losses for them in, you know, equipment and men. But they can't really do that. Now, one of the interesting things, of course, is the Turkish drones. The Turkish drones that Turkey is sending to Ukraine have actually been a fantastic weapon in Ukraine's arsenal. Indeed, they've been what's scoring most of the kills, because here's the thing: while they might be desperate for fighters, as we've heard a lot about this week, you know, it's far easier to teach someone how to use a drone than it is to fly a plane. So you're going to see a lot more, I think, drone, especially drone warfare footage, I think, in the next couple of days as well. Morning. So expect that to escalate as well. And like I say, the more drones they have, they don't really need to secure the air power, because they've got drones flying all around. Remember, if you shoot down an aircraft, it's not just the plane that's going to be replaced, it's potentially the pilot as well. And yes, obviously the plane costs a lot more money, but it doesn't matter if you've got planes but no one to pilot them. And where are you going to? The bridge, does it have a name? No. It's just a little railway bridge. But yeah, I think you're going to see a step up in escalation this week. The big worry is, of course, is that Russia is laying the groundwork to essentially use chemical weapons, which is, of course, is very, very worrying about that. And as we said before, you've seen Assad fight for 4 years in Aleppo, of achieving nothing but losing hundreds of thousands of men and material in that battle to try and get Aleppo. Assad uses barrel bombs, again filled with, you know, chemical weapons, and then 14 days later the siege finally is over in a victory for Assad's forces. What message do you think Putin's going to take away from that, especially with the amount of cities that have essentially been preparing? And if you've seen any footage from Ukrainian cities in the past couple of weeks, you've seen them preparing Molotov cocktails, you've seen them preparing defences, tank traps, they've been building trenches, all kinds of stuff. And that's just the stuff that we know about. That's where Putin goes. And the worrying thing is he okays chemical weapons, and that is what we really have to worry about. So, as always, thank you very much, one and all, for joining me on this fantastic good morning walk. Like I say, please do remember to hit that like and share button on your way out. And of course, if you are new as well, welcome to the channel. This is the Good Morning Walk. We do this every Saturday morning, weather permitting, of course. It's fantastic, glorious weather today. So there are other ways you can support the channel as well. Down below, there are the Patreon link, the Buy Me a Coffee link, and of course the YouTube membership link as well. And all those ways help support the channel. Like I say, very recently, I've just got a new camera and I've got a new light to use now for my studio setup, which will be quite fun. So if you are on like my Patreon or anything like that, I will be posting a picture of the new setup in action. So as always, have a fantastic weekend, everyone. If you can't be safe, at least be sensible, as we always say. Please do, as I always say, remember to wear your masks when you are out and about, still in busy city areas. Unfortunately, though it hasn't been reported, rates are up for hospitals. Indeed, my own hospital in my own town is having quite a hard go of it very recently. So please do remember to think about wearing masks and think about social distancing if you are out and about this weekend. It will help massively the NHS. So, as always, thank you very much for everyone for confirming, for joining this week. Like I say, enjoy your weekends. And as always, watch out for more videos we've got coming out this week. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.